Y'all, I am excited for this topic tonight. The last few days have been like a study in love, and I've needed it. I really needed it because as we grow and put ourselves in new environments and as we change, man, do we need to be reminded of the simple things. There's something around growth where it feels like we're moving up in like getting to the next level, when sometimes it's the foundation that constantly needs to be strengthened over and over again. And really strengthening that foundation is ultimately what ensures that we're protected and having a solid base upon which to get to the next level. So it's when we're thinking about growth, it is growth upward, yes, but it's also an ongoing strengthening at the base. And I'm reminded of this, and I'm like, man, I forgot my base. I forgot my base over the last 2 weeks, and it's been so good to just return to kind of the basics and returning to those simple core aspects that are like very foundational to my own values. There's a reason why businesses hang their values on the wall of their home to remind them, or on the wall of their business, to remind themselves, this is who we are. This is who we claim to be. This is who we and how we live by. These are like effectively like the governing rules. And so the returning to the base has been the last week for me. And these past few days, specifically on the Knowing Show, we've been talking around love. And it has been both in the evening show, but also in the morning show. For those of you who are new, we go live twice a day. We go live in the morning, and we also go live in the evening. And in the morning, we move through just a daily lesson in A Course in Miracles. There's 365 days of them. And so this morning we were on lesson 69. We're on the 69th day of the year. And every single day over the last few days has been around love and around grievances and what we're holding against other people that ultimately prevents us from love in the first place. And so as we've been kind of returning to the basics, returning to the foundation, and just making sure it's strong, it has been so helpful and honestly very rewarding in the best way, in terms of like hearing from other people and gleaning the wisdom others offer from their experience. And I'm excited to dive into it again tonight. Wayne, I'm so glad to see you. I love it. You says, I study in love. Good evening. I love this. Justice Jane, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. And Justice Jane says, please pray for me. I would love to pray for you. If you tell me why and how, and if you are open to it, I would love to pray for you. Y'all, yesterday we were talking about the relevancy of loving thy neighbor, and tonight we're diving into how to do that. And there's some pretty core aspects that we're going to get into tonight, but just a quick recap on some of the things that we've been touching on over the last few days. One, if we are holding grievances against somebody else, it effectively clouds our vision. We cannot see, because now when we're holding grievances, it's like we're taking the pain of the grievances, bringing them up and putting them in front of us, and we're not able to see. Eloise, love, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on timeout. Thanks for joining. Would love for you to hang out, but that's just not the way we talk here. So when we're holding on to grievances, we are fundamentally clouding our view of the other person and ultimately the present moment. That's part of the problem. When we're holding on to pain and past wounds, it clouds our ability to see in the present because we're looking at it from the past. And so when we are holding grievances, we're obstructing the purity of the view now, but also the purity of what could be. There's something around, Jordan Peterson actually said this. He said that when we're in the dating phase of a relationship, people usually put their best foot forward. And then when you get 2 years in, 10 years in, we're actually supposed to hold that person to the standard that they themselves set for us, of like, hey, this is how I can act. This is how I can show up. This is possible. I saw it in you. You saw it in you. You showed up this way for the however long we dated until we got married, or for however long. And I'm going to call you forth. I'm going to call you and hold you to this standard that you set for yourself, that I fell in love with. So there's something around being able to hold people to this standard of excellence. And so when we're able to see through God's eyes, when the person falls and when the person starts acting out of alignment with who we know them to be, if we're looking at them through the eyes of God, we're able to actually call them higher to that standard that we know they are because we've experienced it. We know the truth of who they are. And we've talked about identity over the last few days as well. So again, we're just doing a quick recap on some of the things we've discussed, and then we'll dive into tonight's topic. We've talked about each one of us has effectively two halves to allow for a whole, and which is our identity. So the first half is, who does God say you are? That is universal across the board. Each one of us is loved. Each one of us is worthy. Each one of us is a son and daughter of God. And so that is across the board. And then it's our choice. What do we do with that? Are we going to step into that? Are we going to walk in that? And then the other half of our identity is the uniqueness, the unique person God made you and I to be. And from there, when you kind of combine those two together, it's just like this incredible piece, like two pieces to a puzzle that makes a whole. And it's so electric when you see people fully aware of who God says that they are and fully aware of who he made them to be in the human form. And man, when you've got both of those like activated together, it's so, 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 so cool. So part of this aspect of love is being able to operate from the heart posture. We talked about unconditional love on, I think it was on Sunday. We talked about unconditional love on Sunday. The goal is that unconditional love is stemming from the way God sees all of us. It's not human powered. It's not a human endeavor to try to love from this place. Frankly, it's really, really hard to have unconditional love. And I don't even know if it's even possible at a human level. Maybe it is. But from the level of looking at people, loving people through the way God views them, that is possible. And that is kind of that inner posture of the unconditional love. And so rooted in unconditional love, the way that manifests usually will actually look like boundaries. It will look like, hey, I've got an understanding, I've got data on who you are, how you are, and I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to make sure that I show up in a way that actually continues to foster who you are and your own potential and your own like excellence. But then I'm also going to make sure that I am protecting myself. Jesus, even in, I forget what scripture specifically, but it says he did not entrust himself because he knew their heart. So the more keen we are and the more aware we are of where and how people are operating, the more we're actually, and we're seeing through God's eyes, the more we're actually able to be wise on how to engage and how to interact with them. So as we talk about how to love thy neighbor, there's one core principle that I want to talk about tonight. There's multiple ways to love people, but the one specifically, as I was really kind of considering our conversation tonight, one really stood out to me, and I'm excited to share what that is here in just a minute. But before I do, I just want to jump here in the chat. Jake says, stop using that software. We want to see the real you. I don't know what software. I am, that was a sun. If you're talking about lighting, I don't know what you mean. But I'm glad you're here, Jake. Good to see you. Nicholas, hello. Oh, thanks for joining. Asim, hello. Bordeaux. Glad you're here. Parathon, thank you for joining. Elijah, hello. He says Jordan Peterson is a lunatic. I've heard a lot of things. I haven't seen much of his recent work, but I've heard some things recently that he maybe has changed a bit. But I do love Rules for Life. Jake, thanks for joining. Aram, Wayne, I think we should all hold our friends to a higher standard. Man, I agree. Y'all, I think one of the most loving things we can do is actually to remind people of who they are truly, who they're capable of being, to call people out like, hey, I feel like you're actually not operating in the fullness and in your fullest potential. And what would it look like if you were to operate at that level? Man, I know I would be grateful. There's a concept, better are the wounds of a friend than kisses from an enemy. And y'all, we want to be those friends. We want to be those friends who offer the truth, even if it hurts. And here's the thing, how to love your neighbor. Well, love, if we're actually talking about love, it's delivering the truth in love. The truth does not replace love. It is the truth and and couched and cushioned in love. Love is always the foundation. Love is the powering source in the delivery. It's like the vehicle upon which the truth is offered. And y'all, what a different world we would live in if parents delivered truth to their children with the vehicle of love. If bosses did that for their employees, that doesn't mean that it's not firm or within, a firm or even anger. Like, anger is actually really important. Righteous anger is very possible and can be very effective. And same thing with just kind of the quiet disappointment. Like, there's so many modes of delivery, but so long as the ultimate vehicle is love, when the truth is delivered in that vehicle of love, it is so powerful and it makes a lasting impact. Al-Cap, hello. Thank you for joining. Roadhouse, hi. Axel, Amari. Wayne says, I'm curious, are you more interested in the puzzle or the result? I think you're talking about the puzzle of effectively the two parts of our identity of who God made us to be effectively in the human form, our unique personality, the unique aspects of who we are, along with who he universally created. He calls everybody worthy. He calls everyone loved. And so then it's our choice of how do I respond. So I think you're asking, are you more interested in our identity itself or in the outcome of how we live? And, I think if we focus on the outcome, we actually miss the internal state. So I actually think that the internal state is really important to focus on first, because from that point, we cannot help but overflow. If what is inside is authentic and genuine, we cannot help but have the overflow mirror that. And so, for example, anything in my external life that is not matching up to how and who I want to be, I actually need to go and do the inner work first. And then the external will have a natural effect in the overflow. And that doesn't mean that we're void of real action. But the thing is that it's like we can't help but act accordingly if we're motivated by excellence internally and we're motivated by, making an impact and making a difference and serving and really being able to change the culture. If we're motivated from that, we cannot help but have that spill over into action. Francis, hello. I'm from Mexicali, BC. Hello, Jazzy. Good morning to you. It's afternoon for me. Randy, good evening. Lucky, I says, are you at the office? I work from home, so technically I'm at the office. Storm, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for joining. The UT truth, what if they refuse to be held on a high standard, continually complain about everything in life and make life difficult already as it is? That's a hard person to be around. That's hard, and when you, and you know what, I would ask you this, the you truth. Anytime I see people acting in a way that makes me upset, I go inward. I think all of us have to, how is what they're doing, why is that impacting me so much? Why am I getting so annoyed? And, I actually have somebody in my life who I get very easily triggered by. And the reason why I'm easily triggered is because that's in me already. And it's just like, there's something in me that their action, it's like flint and stone, it triggers it. But if that wasn't in me to begin with, then I wouldn't easily be triggered by that. And so there's either a value that I have that they're living in the antithesis of that, or maybe there's actually something from the past that I haven't healed or moved forward from that they're triggering. And I'm sure that there's more options, but that's honestly what I found so often, that when I am really annoyed at people, it's because they're brushing up against a value that is very dear and near to me, or there's something unhealed in me. So I'd be curious in that regard. But yeah, when they refuse to be held to a higher standard, I think that frankly, it's all right, well, I'm going to go inward and I'm going to hold myself to the highest standard I possibly can. And if you're unwilling to change, it depends obviously on the type of relationship. Only you can say what action needs to be taken, and maybe no action at all. I think one of the most profoundly impactful things you and I can do to love well is simply by living by example. There's something about embodying what we say we hold as a value. I wrote my eulogy when I turned 30, and that for me was glaring at this picture that I had said, this is who I want to be. This is how I want to live my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not living accordingly. And I need to change this area of my life and change that area of my life because I'm currently not on the right track. And so for me, I've actually got I'm going to have a lot of areas for improvement pretty much at all times moving forward. And I don't really have time to be looking at other people and assessing their life. If they want to, have me do that, that's one thing. And I get to serve them and love them that way. But man, do I have to ensure that I'm really living out and assuming agency for my life. And y'all, when we do that, I've just found inevitably those people, David Goggins says this, he says, I would rather lose friends and force them to change than have tons of friends and have them all love me. I'd rather be but he's talking not by being like verbally abusive, but just his example, the way he lives, the dedication to discipline, the dedication to who he strives to be is such a stark and drastic demarcation so that people are forced to decide, am I going to be better and level up, or am I going to stick with the status quo? Because if I'm going to stick with the status quo, I actually cannot hang out with David. So we ourselves are the demarcating line by our example and by the life we live. I was on the Knowing Show earlier this morning, or actually this afternoon, with an incredible woman. She was named Forbes 30 Under 30 in the UK. And I think she was also on the top most inspiring women in tech in the UK. And she's maybe, 27, 28. She seemed young. And, we were talking about this, and she said when she was 13 years old, she was living in Prague. It was a very cozy, comfortable life. And she went to her parents, and she just had this desire to experience the fullness of life. And she said, I really want to go travel. So she lived with a family in Brighton, UK. And then she went to Spain the next summer, completely in a brand new country, didn't know any Spanish. And she just wanted to immerse herself and learn Spanish and live with this family. And there's sometimes just this grit and this desire in us that's not in everybody. And man, though, do I feel inspired. And man, other people on the Knowing Show earlier today felt inspired. So it's like, okay, what does that look like? What does it look like for me to live to my top 1%, my own threshold and echelon of potential? Y'all, it might be really easy for us to see that for somebody else, but they have to have that vision for them. They have to see for themselves what's possible. Otherwise, we are banging our heads against brick wall because they are unwilling to change. And that is so frustrating, and that cannot do more damage to a relationship than most anything I can think of. If we are willing to accept people for as they are, and y'all, that's how God views us. So the you truth, I just so appreciated what you said, because in one sense it's so hard. Those, the person that you described, it's a real challenge for me to be around them. Actually, being grateful is a value. So when people are complaining, it really it's like somebody scraping their claws on a chalkboard. It's like, ah. And so what you said, it's really frustrating. And I want to view them through an eyes of love. That doesn't mean I don't remind them who they are, but my own example should be enough. And that's the goal, right? That each one of us is living so potently that we ourselves are an example. Just coming back here to the chat. I'm looking through some of this stuff. Y'all, I'm just a quick note. I know that I've been saying this a little bit more now, but for anyone who's just really not being kind or being really inappropriate, we're going to go ahead and put you on timeout. But I'm glad you're here. I really, really, truly am. I know that there's so much content and so many live streams, so I would love for you to hang out with us. Chris, good to see you. Max, hello. Jake, hello from SXSW, Austin, Texas. Is that an event? I feel like I've seen that before, but I don't know what that stands for. How is it so? Hello, good to see you. I like your handle. Desiree, hello. Darlie. Desiree, I'm glad you're here. You're a friend of family. I love that. Oh, Wayne, I love this. Wayne just brought on the truth and like really summarized what we were just talking about. He says, do not your pearls before swine. Y'all, there is something to that. And actually, I'm just so grateful, Wayne. This is why we all need each other, because, man, what you just said, Wayne, that really brings the truth home. If we're sharing things that we've learned that have really, really changed us, impacted us, made a difference in our life, and we're sharing it with heart and with fervor, and it just continues to be squashed, man, that's really, really dangerous, because the truth, the integrity of the truth of what you're sharing, even, it's interesting, even some of the folks here in the chat, it's just like, all right, so at what point do you actually establish a boundary to protect not just you, but to protect the truth, to protect what you're sharing, to protect what has been revealed to you? Y'all, every single one of us, I believe this deep in my core, every single one of us has something for the rest of the world. Like, I really believe that God has revealed a big piece of himself to every single one of us, that together, when we add all those pieces together, we really come to see the fullest picture of God. And so in thus sharing it with others, if they're trampling on it, if they're scorning it, if they're not taking it seriously, if they're I just, here's the thing. The conclusion of that verse, Wayne, that you're sharing, it's, do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they turn around and trample you and tear you to pieces. It's not just that they dishonor the truth. It's that they will come around and literally like tear you apart if you've got no boundaries, if you've got no protection over yourself and the message that you've got. Man, I'm so glad you said that. That is so, so, so important. Matthew, hello. Unfortunately, most people only care about themselves. One good friend. Big MF. I'm going to go ahead and put you on timeout. It sounds like you don't want to be here, so I'm going to go ahead and put you on timeout to spare you. Why do we attract so many insecure individuals? Wayne says. And Mohammed, just to answer your question, he says, what are we talking about here? First, hello. I'm so glad you're here. We're talking about how to, like, the action steps to really loving each other, to loving thy neighbor as themselves, as ourselves. That's the number one greatest commandment, and what that looks like. And so Wayne says, why are we attracting so many insecure individuals? I think, Wayne, I've found this to be true in some ways, and I actually want to add on to this narrative. Everyone talks about what we put out is what we attract. And I actually think that there is another half to this puzzle. If we are on our mission, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're living fully and awake and alive, et cetera, living well, healthy, I actually think that we're not just going to attract people who are kind of similar to us, who like have our energy, let's say, like knows like. That's kind of like concept number one. But concept number two is, I actually think that we are going to start inevitably attracting people who need to be healed by what we have. And I think that that's the goal. And y'all, we don't talk about that. And frankly, Wayne, I just love that you asked this question, because I've never thought of it like this before. I think that if we're not attracting people that we get to serve and love on and care for, then are we actually showing up with a heart to serve? Because I think when we show up with a heart to serve, we're actually going to start seeing those people. And I got to tell you, there's something around our ego that wants to attract the biggest and brightest and the best and most successful and accomplished. But man, when you look at the people that Christ was surrounded by, they were actually the least attractive by society's standards. They were the least impressive. And so am I humble enough? And do I have the eyes of God enough to see the worth and value in every single person? Even the people who come onto this chat, or the people that I engage in the grocery store, the people that I engage on the side of the road while I'm driving my car and they're standing there baking. Can I see Christ in them? Can I see them for as God sees them? And can I have a heart not just of love, but also, man, I've got so much overflow of my own love stored up so that I can give you what I need. And so on that point, I actually want to dive into our topic. I haven't even gotten to what we had planned for tonight, how to love thy neighbor. Y'all, the number one thing that came to mind as I was prepping for tonight and just thinking about it is listening. Really truly listening. The art of listening is something that has been lost in so many ways. And listening to three different people. The first person that we need to listen to is them. And this isn't in the order. It's actually starting the third person you're going to listen to. So point three, and we'll work our way back. But the third person that we need to listen to is actually them. How do they want to be loved? What do they need? Y'all, so many times we're engaging with people with our own preconceived notions of what they need, what's wrong with them, how do we actually want to be loved projected on them. And so listening it's like the secret weapon to giving us a pathway into their hearts, to really hear what their need is. What do they care about? What are their values? What are they actually truly struggling with? We see this even in like other countries. I went to an orphanage a couple of times in high school. We had our own ideas of what these kids needed. And you know what? When we showed up, they actually had food. They actually really wanted literally to be held. They hadn't had physical touch. And so there was something around just like letting these kids hang on you. Like they were like little monkeys and they just wanted to have physical touch and just be loved on. Whereas we came in and we were like, we're going to do all this VBS. We're going to do all these games with them. And all they wanted was just to be held. We also built a nursery for the babies that were left on the side of the road in Mexico, which was so rewarding, to do something physical where you can leave something behind for real impact. But it was interesting when we go with eyes and ears wide open to listen to what our neighbor needs. They're probably going to have a very different need than we anticipated. And then the question is our ego able to step aside? Because usually what somebody needs doesn't make us look good. And so are we willing to step aside and not look good in the process of just being there, not doing anything, but just allowing our presence to be the love that allows for the real change at the root level for them? But here's the cool thing is that we end up inevitably being changed at the same time, because that's what love does. It literally is transformational for both parties. And the second person we need to listen to. So person number 3 is them. Person number 2 is, actually, before I do, I'm going to go ahead and jump here in the chat before I say that. Dirty Evil, good to see. I'm going to go ahead and put you on timeout, but I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining. Sim, love and success to everyone. I love that. Also, your picture is beautiful. Man in the Hat, hello. Do not throw your pearls to the pigs means do not give God's word to those who do not want to hear it. It is not appropriate to give it other definitions. I think I have but maybe I'm flying in the face of what you're saying. I think that there's so much meaning to so many of these verses, so many of these allegories. I think that there's actually a depth of like layer. It's like, here's the onion of this verse and then peel it back. And there's just so much richness and meaning to it. That's my perspective. I think that there's so much in the allegory, in the story of what's being shared, that it's never limited to just a black or white answer. That's my perspective, but I love you jumping in and adding that, because I agree with you in that regard. I just also think that it means more. I think God's like big enough to do that, to add in so many more meanings. Robert Westover, good to see you. Ankin, hello. Carlos, Humanity's Red Ball. I'm glad you're here. Jesus didn't waste time. Stamp the dust off your feet and move on. So good. One good friend is better than fake 50. Yes. The best ever. Hello. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you found us. This is great. Mako, good to see you. So we attract what we are. Wayne, yeah, in so many ways. And I actually think that when we get to the level of, and I do think it's kind of a level, I don't know if it's leveling up or it's a lateral level. But I do think it's different. We attract what we are in so many ways. And man, what a blessing when we can attract people who are needing love and we've got something to give. I actually think that that's part of our mission. Otherwise, we're all just staying in our own little silos of isolation and moving around. You know, if Jesus was attracting people who were just like him, we would have never been around him because he was so beautiful, so wonderful, so perfect. And none, you know, no one else was like that. But it called everybody higher and it allowed for people to wake up to who they could be and what's possible with Christ in them. And so I think it's both. And to be honest with you, I don't hear people talking about that. I hear people talking about like knows like, the law of attraction, you attract what you are. But I think that there is a missing component, which is, man, when you are on a mission to make an impact and serve, you're going to start attracting people from kind of like the quiet recesses. And man, those are the people that need love on the most. And usually they're the ones that don't have as much to give. So, Mako, I already said hello, but hi again. Hassan, hello. Muhammad. I'm glad you can. Big Street Cat, hello. Oh, I love this. Man in the Hat, so wise. If you are doing your God-given purpose, the more resistance you will face. If you are on your path, evil will try to pull you away. I completely agree. Man, it's so true. Jake, I'm so glad you're here. And we just really don't talk like that. And so I would love for you to stay, but it's just getting inappropriate. So humanity says, love your enemies so that you may be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. I love that. Matthew, thanks for joining. All right, I am going to go back to point number 2. Okay. Tommy, oh, there we go. I'm so glad you're here. There I was again, about to go to sleep, but then thought, wait, maybe Christene Marie is live. Yay, I'm so glad you're here to hang out with us. Shyamo, good to see you, Shy. Max, good to see you. We're talking about practices to love thy neighbor. And so person 1, 2, and 3, in terms of who we need to listen to. Listening is one of the greatest vehicles and pathways to loving thy neighbor that I can think of. And frankly, that I've experienced both in terms of giving love and receiving love. Listening is such a gift. It is such a gift. And it makes us feel so seen. Just not even to be asked a question, but to really be listened to and really be heard. Listening really is such a gift. And I'm so grateful for every single person in my life. Honestly, I'm kind of like letting that sink in. Who listens to you? Who listens to you? Who makes you feel seen? And y'all, those people are like worthy of being thanked. You know, I want to thank my mom, but I do. My mom is wonderful. She's so wonderful at listening. So who are the people that listen to you? And y'all, those people that listen, they're often the ones that we discount the most and take for granted the most. And so just considering who are those people that actually are worthy of being thanked for how they have listened to you, believed in you. And they're usually the ones that we don't thank the most often. So person number 2, how to love thy neighbor. Listening is one of the greatest vehicles to do that. Person number 3 in this list is the neighbor themselves. How do they want to be loved? Usually it is not sexy. It is not, it's not full of some form of external glory. You know, you and I aren't going to look good loving this person. You know, most often they're not looking for something high and mighty. Usually it's something really genuine and something very personal, and it's not going to get a lot of praise or glory from the outside world. So listening to that person, to that neighbor who we're trying to love, listen to what they need, what they want. Do not, and y'all, this is so important. We cannot love people the way we want to be loved. We can start out that way maybe, but as we build the relationship, asking the questions of, hey, what does love mean to you? When have you felt most loved? What did love feel like? asking questions is really the pathway to the heart of that person. What does love mean to you? When have you felt loved? Asking those questions. The second person that we need to listen to in order to love our neighbor well is actually you and me. I had this moment this past weekend where I was going to my darling's house because it was his birthday, and I show up and he is upstairs in bed sick. And I had all these plans for the night, and love for me in that moment was all these grandiose gestures, but love for him in that moment was literally me like rubbing his head. Nothing sexy, nothing fancy, nothing to ride home about, nothing that made me feel good. So love in that moment was solely about what he needed and how could I really enter into his experience. And y'all, that's what love does. Love enters into the experience of somebody else in so many ways, feeling what they're feeling, understanding the context, understanding that person, what their deep emotions are, their cognitive narrative, their physical experience, understanding at all those deep levels. And so how does that translate into you and I actually need to listen to us? Why does that matter when we're talking about loving our neighbor? The reason why this matters is because, and for those of you who are friends of the Knowing Show, you've heard this, y'all, we need to be loving from a full cup. We need to be loving ideally from overflow, from excess. We've filled up ourselves so much of love, the love of God, the love for our neighbors, so that we're giving from just this excess. And then when I show up, I've got all these plans, and then everything kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. I have so much excess that I can pull from and say, you know what? My plans don't matter. This is about you. This is about your birthday. This is about you getting well. This is about loving you well tonight. And so what was interesting though is that I could tell I was in such doing mode, because what people need to be loved, they need the being, the love of God that comes and permeates inside of us that then flows through us. But it needs to be in us first in order for it to flow through us. So I need to make sure my being is in right order with God so that then it flows into my doing. So I took a moment to just assess, okay, how am I doing here? And I was sitting there rubbing his head, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually really, really hungry, and I'm tired, and I've just been running all around town trying to make this whole weekend special, and everything's changing at the last minute. And so I wanted to eat something. I said, hey, are you hungry? He says, no, I just want to lie here. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'll be right back. So I went downstairs. I made this like massive charcuterie board. I opened a bottle of wine just for me. I was like, you know what? This is what I want, and this is what I need right now. And I'm going to go love the heck out of him. Like, I'm just going to make him feel so cared for. But this is actually what I think I need in this moment so that I can give from my overflow. And I brought the charcuterie upstairs, and we ended up, both of us ate the charcuterie, even though he said he wasn't hungry. And we watched comedy for 2 hours. And it was just so wonderful, and it was so fun. But it was because I had checked in with, how am I actually doing? Can I love well in my current state? Do I need anything to be able to give from this reservoir, to give from this overflow? Y'all, so often people really benefit from you and I enjoying life, from you and I being full and alive and joy-filled and peaceful. If we're solely focused on our neighbor, we're actually putting them on a pedestal and more than likely going to have our emotional well-being tied to them. So if I had been looking to my darling to fulfill, how am I worthy? Am I doing a good job in this relationship? Am I making you feel loved? If all of my weight was put on his reaction, I come upstairs, he's lying in bed sick. Well, I've totally failed. I'm not giving this birthday that he wanted, giving the dreams that he wanted, et cetera, et cetera. Not that he had a list of demands, but I had my own expectations for how this weekend would go. Y'all, codependency is one of the most damaging things in relationships, because we think we're making it all about them, but at the end of the day, we're the ones that we're ultimately concerned about, because our worth and our value is predicated in their opinion of us. Have we done enough? Have we served enough? Have we given enough? And so by us actually taking time to really consider, how am I doing? Am I coming from a full tank? Am I giving from my overflow? Man, Does that make a difference for them? Because then they get to enter into an experience that's already alive. So many people want to enter into an experience. We've been talking about this on the morning show. They want to experience the light of the world. So if we're stepping into our light, if we're stepping into who God made us to be, where do you shine? What are your skill sets? Where do you, not even just skill sets, but like what is so unique about you that other people crave and long for? And the more we can actually tune into that, then the more that we cultivate it, the more we actually enter into, yes, we enter into their experience, but man, we're coming full-fledged and full force. Like I was at his house, but I was able to bring an experience of life and love and ultimately serving as the light of the world. And y'all, that is exactly how each one of us needs to be operating, is from that place of fullness. But it's from being fed in from the love of God that then it can flow out through us. Just jumping in here quickly. It's getting dark. Just jumping in here to the chat. Someone told me to slow down. Sorry. When I get excited, I talk fast. Enervate. Hello. Thank you for joining. Down, better believe. Thanks for joining. Caleb Castro says, sometimes life gets so hard and I wish people would care about each other more. Man, I am totally with you. And Hervate says, I shine in the darkness. I love that. Darren, sorry, I was going too fast. Oh, Tommy, I love you. Thank you. You're so encouraging, man. And you know, guys, this is the thing that's really cool, is that when we know how we shine and the life we can bring to other people, then it's like, oh, okay, now that I know what it looks like, sounds like, feels like for me to be operating in health, for me to be operating as the light of the world, then we can start seeing, oh, I'm not operating that way. Okay, now I can also know, okay, these are the things that help me to operate that way. Once we're aware of what we can bring to other people, and like, this is where understanding our identity is so important. Who did God make all of us to be? We are all loved. We're all worthy. These are all the truths about every single one of us. How did God make me uniquely? And what does it look like for me to be the light of the world? What does it look like for me to stand up and be brave and really allow for my light to shine and to be a city on a hill? A city on a hill is not hidden. You know, everybody can see it. And so what does it look like when you shine? And, you know, I know folks here are, you know, they'll say I'm introverted, and that's not the point. The point is, do you know what it looks like, sounds like for you to shine brightly, for you to be able to love well and to be giving from that full cup? Good boy. Hello. Yvonne. Thanks for joining. Jog. Matthew. Thank you. I love this. Okay, so the man in the hat says, loving your neighbor means to help a fellow human with something they need to survive, even enemies, whether it's a drink or food or some clothes or shelter. Everything else is a want, not a necessity. Everything else is a want, not a necessity. You know, and isn't that an interesting thing? Does loving your neighbor, like, I wonder, you know, how much of it is when we actually are able to fulfill on their needs of survival. Yesterday, we actually talked a little bit about this. I love that you brought this up. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about, you know, I forget exactly what the question was, but it was something around what is your obligation to life? And somebody said survival. And sometimes that's the best we can do. It really, really is. Like, the best we can do is merely to survive, just with how hard life can be sometimes. So for those of you who are in that survival stage, I'm just proud of you for showing up and doing the work. So thank you, guys. All right, let's go ahead and get to the last person. So we were talking about how to love thy neighbor is through the pathway and vehicle of listening in so many ways. And I wonder, the man in the hat, to your point, uh, around survival and necessity, what do they need? And then after we meet their needs, then it's like, okay, do the next level in some ways is, okay, well, what do you want? What would be your ideal and how can I help you get there? If we're so called to do that. So the third person that we need to listen to, the third person that we need to listen to is the neighbor themselves. What do they need? What do they want? Second is you and me. How are we doing? Checking in. Is there anything that we actually need in order to love well, so that we're not giving from a place of lack and we're not giving from a place of strings attached? And then the first person we need to check in with every time, the first person we need to listen to is God himself, because he knows that person. He knows exactly what they need, probably better than they do. And if we have a heart posture of listening, we get to garner like divine insight on how to love people, how to really, really make an impact and meet them where they are. And we're able to literally go and sit alongside them and look at the world through their eyes and really understand why they are, how they are, what's their backstory, again, context. And then from that position, we then can take action. That is compassion, empathy in action. That's compassion. And so if we want to comfort and love with the same type of comfort and love with which we've received, tuning in and checking in and listening to God and saying, would you tell me, what does this person need? How are they doing? How can I love them? How can I really, really step in and be you to these people with my own unique flair? That's what's so cool, is that we get to, yes, be ambassadors, yes, be advocates for God, but also he made each one of us so different. And so each one of us has a very unique reason and purpose for being here. In so many ways, the world needs you and me. And I love that. I really, really do. Just jumping back here in the chat, and then we are going to hop off for the evening. I need to go do my branding and marketing show. But before I do, just jumping here in the chat. Yes, Tommy, love it. It's like flight attendants. That's what he says. Put on your own oxygen mask first. I love that. That is so, so, so true. And here's the thing that's so cool. We were talking this morning about, take the log out of your own eye to then see clearly, to remove that speck in your brother's eye when we're talking about grievances. The same goes for loving well. Go tend to yourself so that you can give and love freely and fully. It goes both ways. And that's what's so beautiful. It's not just, it's not just this harsh judge of look at all your own problems and never take care of yourself. It's like, no, like really, really take care of yourself in both ways. Be the critic and the advocate to, I guess, echo what our friend earlier, Ina, said today on the Knowing Show. Stephen, thank you. Thank you for joining. Michael, hello. I'm glad you're here. Mr. Max, watching you from North Korea. How cool. I'm so glad you're here. Darren, thanks for joining. Caleb says, I wish there were that we could build more cities underground with crops raised at LED lights. So much housing, people wouldn't have to worry about having a place to live. What a fascinating idea. Huh. So interesting. C. Martin Love. Hello, my friend. Ultimately, to shine is to let your inner light overcome negativity and live authentically. I love that. Y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. We're going to be on again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. And I'm excited to continue our conversation. I don't know what tomorrow's lesson is, but the last few days have really been around love and letting go of grievances. And frankly, it's just been so timely for me. And isn't that how the world works? So thank you guys for joining. I the Fight, Peace from Vancouver, Washington. Thank you for joining. Man in the Hat, Matthew 10:39 again. This verse emphasizes that prioritizing self-preservation through compromise, worldly ambition, fear, leads to spiritual loss. I completely agree. Through compromise, fear, and fear, worldly ambition, and compromise leads to spiritual loss. I love that. That's so good. He who finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. That means live for the will of God, not yourself. So I'm going to reverse engineer it. The first person you need to listen to is God. The second person you need to listen to, what does your intuition say? How are you doing? And then third, go love the heck out of your neighbor, but listen to them first. What do they need? And ultimately, God so often has a little secret message for you on how to love them well. So y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. I will see you hopefully tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. Otherwise, let me just do a quick check on our day tomorrow. I need to check my calendar and just see if I have any other amazing guests joining or what the deal is. I do. I have an amazing guest joining. Annie Mayfield. I'm so excited. She will be joining. We'll be going live tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be going live. We've got trivia tomorrow night. How could I forget? We have trivia. Trivia at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. We have a guest tomorrow at 8:30 or 2:30, which will be an amazing conversation. But man, trivia is going to be fun. So yay, I'm so excited. And then I'll be live with y'all tomorrow at 9 a.m. for A Course in Miracles. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you tomorrow, and we're going to have an amazing chat. For those of you who want to hop over, we're going to be talking branding, marketing, all things business over at Foundation First on YouTube. So let me drop this for you if you guys want to come talk business. I'll be live there in about probably 7 minutes on the half hour. No, thanks for joining. I'm so glad you came. I just put this here in the chat. So I will see you all tomorrow or in 7 minutes. Talk soon.